Okay, the roll call.
Dale Schlueter,
Here.
Jesse Betcher,
Here.
Tweed Schuman, Stacy Hessel, James Schlender, Mark Helwig, Tom Duffy, Bruce Paulson, Brian Bizanet,
Here.
Chuck Van Etten, Dale Olson, Dawn Pettit,
Here.
Ron Kinsley, Ron Buckholtz, Ed Peters. You have a quorum.
Okay, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And flag the United States of America, and to which the flag. Flag.
Okay. Certification and compliance of open meetings.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Meeting agenda, we have a change.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mr.
Bruce.
Chairman, I suggest we move item 14A down to item 18A.
Okay. Any other changes? Motion to approve? Thank you. Second? Mr. Duffy. Okay. Okay, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, it passed. Public comments. Anyone who has a desire to speak to this board will have 3 minutes apiece for you to talk on any subject you wish. First up is Robert Eskimil. I'm probably butchering that name. Robert? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Roberto Escamilla. I live at 10695 North Ranke Street, apartment 15 in Hayward, Wisconsin. And I thought about this situation. Well, I shouldn't say it's a situation, but I thought it was a moment that I thought I had not seen since I moved here from Milwaukee County. Gentleman from the 16th, Mr. Peters, made a motion, or at least made a questioning of the section C, or subsection C, of the virtual meeting policy, in which he sat there and said that he had a problem with the wording of he, she. I'm sorry, people. Words have meaning. And to sit here and say that, let me use the gentleman's wording himself, if you let me. This was from the meeting. He said, in today's climate, with more inclusive language in a variety of different places, the term they could be referred to an individual person or group of people. And when corporate counsel asked him, how does he mean how they identify? He said, yes, how they identify. Ladies and gentlemen, I have seen in my area where I lived at, certain groups, let's just name them the LGBTQ groups. What they would start off at is a small little part in the legislation, any little legislation they could find. And they would do these type of things, and suddenly it would become full blown. Now, I'm going to tell you how much it got there. Down in Milwaukee, we have a thing called festivals, and the big one is Summerfest. Well, the way they started Summerfest basically was when Festa Italiana would start, and we knew that the festival was coming. Season of festivals in June, starting in June. Then basically became the next one that started was Bastille Days. Well, that's fine because it was basically based on culture and that, different cultures. But then all of a sudden, the LGBT groups, now they basically have what starts it in the summertime is Pride Fest. And I can tell you, they begin their parade, and I want to tell you, as they're going parading, there are some of the most, I can't say obscene things that you see in this parade. Now you think about what's happening in what happens in California. That is actually what's happening in Milwaukee. I'm just saying, people, words mean things. We should keep it as he, she.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Your 3 minutes are done. Thank you. Aaron Hallberg, did I get that right?
Hi, my name is Aaron Hallberg. I live at 10335 N Duffy Road in Ward 4, I believe, District 4. I identify as a fully immune American. I'm here to talk a little bit about just what I think I felt from this board in observing some of your meetings over the last year. And I really do thank you for your service. This has been an unprecedented time. I've been involved trying to learn more about what our school board has done and should be doing maybe. Sorry, I must be getting on CNN all of a sudden. COVID's been tough, but okay, so my comments, I guess, are related to COVID updates. And I sat in on a meeting last week where I heard an update from Public Health Coordinator Julia Lyons, and all of you complimented her on the excellent job she's doing. But I think there's some better questions that we could be asking. And I'm not saying she's doing a terrible job necessarily. I'm just saying, let's ask good questions if we want good answers. There was a graph that she presented that showed the number of people getting COVID that were fully vaccinated, and then the number of people who were getting COVID that were not fully vaccinated. And the not fully vaccinated group was much larger. But that not fully vaccinated group includes people who are partially vaccinated. Not fully vaccinated does not mean no vaccinations regarding COVID. It means the requisite number of shots and the 2 weeks following the last shot has not gone by. So I just think it would be interesting if we were actually trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. Let's identify people as fully vaccinated, partially vaccinated, or not vaccinated at all. Also on vaccines, I don't believe, and this stuff changes so fast, but I don't believe we have any FDA-approved vaccines being administered in Sawyer County. If I'm wrong, I would like to know it. But as far as I know, there's only one FDA-approved vaccine. That's the Pfizer Comirnaty vaccine. And as far as I know, it's not being administered anywhere. So we're administering emergency use authorization vaccines in Sawyer County. As far as I know, I don't see any statistics on how much we're giving of which vaccine. But if Comirnaty is the only one that's approved, why is there any talk about mandating vaccines that are emergency use authorization, which requires voluntary consent? And it's also predicated upon no alternative treatment methods available, which I'm sorry, but I believe there are, and I think a lot of Americans are smelling a rat when it comes to pushing the COVID vaccines up as much as possible and pushing down alternative health solutions that could really help people. Also, I do think that there's awareness that there's more health issues going on besides COVID. I would like to see statistics related to what the vaccination status is of these serious health effects. Is there a correlation between some of these strange increases in hospitalization rates and somebody's vaccination status? I don't know. I'm not here to start a conspiracy or anything like that, but I think that's a question we should ask. If we want the truth, we ask for the truth. The truth, as St. Augustine said, the truth does not need to be protected. Ask good questions, bring the light of day to this. The truth will defend itself. Also, I think, I don't know if I have any more time, but the public health nurse, I think, also indicated that a lot of the positive tests are bringing back other diseases such as RSV in addition to COVID. Let's be honest about that as well. If there are things like RSV and other contagious diseases, let's just not lump this all into COVID-19. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Harold Miller.
Hello, I'm Harold Miller. I live on Porky's Road here in Hayward. I'm here tonight to speak in support of health freedom. We've often heard fear-laden arguments and scare tactics from the talking heads in the mainstream media, also many doctors and health officials that have been bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. Tonight I'm going to avoid addressing the science altogether, as the real issue is not the fake news or fake science that we've been flooded with the last 18 months. The real issue, I believe, is that regardless of the numbers, is that there is neither a federal nor state nor local authorities or employer that has any lawful jurisdiction or interest in yours or my personal health choices. The Fourth Amendment states that the people have a right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. This is not subject to any mandate, pandemic, or tyrannical request. The answer we need to give from the very start needs to be that it is none of your business whether I'm vaccinated or not. We shouldn't be separating and dividing people based on a status. We should not even be required to disclose private medical information. It's come to my attention that we have a freedom-loving patriot who, in attempt to preserve and protect the freedom, liberty, and God-given rights of his countrymen, whom he represents, has introduced a resolution this past week to prevent medical discrimination and termination from employment based on healthcare choices, such as declining a vaccine. It has been brought to my attention that there are some things with the wording that should be revised slightly, specifically the end statement of that resolution, where it stated that the sole reason for termination should not be vaccination. I would suggest that be altered to read that there shall not be a valid reason. Immunization shall not be a valid reason for denying termination of employment. I believe that Jesse Betcher has the spirit of freedom at the heart of the resolution he submitted, and I and many others in Sawyer County demand a vote and adoption of an updated version of this resolution to protect the rights of all Sawyer County citizens. All state, county, and local magistrates take an oath to uphold their state constitution and the U.S. Constitution. They do not take an oath of subservience to the federal government, nor do they take an oath to blindly obey the authority above them or empower employers to violate the personal rights and choices of their employees. I urge all members of the board to embrace this resolution, whether through committee or through a vote of the full board, and choose freedom and liberty. We the people demand freedom and will not tolerate tyranny, either in Washington or right here in our own community. I stand tonight for freedom and ask that all freedom-loving patriots continue to stand firm, as there are more with us than there are with them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No hands up. Okay, now can I get a motion for the approval of last meeting's minutes? Okay. Did you get the, okay, yeah, no, Mr. Peters, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. Okay, item 8. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of last month, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. Now the COVID update. Julia, are you online here? Okay.
Yes, I am. Sharing my screen
You
now.
have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see here. Get to the slideshow. Okay. Evening. Update for this evening. As we all are most likely aware, we are still in high spread of COVID right now. Did get a little bit higher than I had anticipated us to be. As we can see from the graph, I was kind of hoping we would kind of bottom out in kind of those first sections in here. We did get a bit higher here. We are dropping down a little bit, probably going to plateau here for the next 2 weeks. And this is, again, is the slides that I typically show. It just continues to say that we're high throughout Wisconsin. Some of the southern states now are starting to see that dip down. Hopefully within some of the state is starting to drop down. We are lagging behind that drop. With the age distribution, this is a question that I've been asked on what are we seeing for age distribution. We are fairly mirroring what we're seeing for Wisconsin in the age distribution. So we are seeing the 0 to 18-year-old population being where we kind of saw this spike right now, closely followed actually by the 35 to 44 range. Hospital capacity, this is in our system, is in the Northwest system, and this is where we typically send patients to. We also send patients to Duluth and to the cities. My understanding from the hospital is the issues we're having is not that we're having really high amounts of COVID cases in the hospital locally and around the area, but that there's a number of people that are hospitalized on top of COVID, which tends to happen as we get into these fall times of the year and into winter, and it makes it difficult to transfer patients out. So that is really what the hospital is struggling with right now, is needing to keep patients that we normally would have sent out earlier. We're keeping them a little bit longer. The other question I've been asked is about the variants, and the news likes to bring in all of these new variations and things that we should be worried about. The latest one is an AY series, but it is one of the Delta variants, and at this point we're watching, but it isn't something that's risen to be something that we're really looking at closely at this point. So it's just a watch and wait. We continue to see Delta as the variant that we're seeing across Wisconsin. One of the things that we have been working on for the last few months is to become a community testing site for Sawyer County. We were able to get on with the state, and we opened last Thursday. Our site is at the old Oasis site, which is right next to Journeys on Highway 63. And we are giving antigen tests, so we are able to get rapid results within usually about a half an hour for people. And we can do PCR send outs as well. We do not charge for these. We do ask that you set up an appointment. We are vaccinating Monday through Friday, and you call the Health and Human Services number. This is to look at the number of cases. People have been asking about, you know, how many people are fully vaccinated versus partially vaccinated. Erin, I did hear what you're saying. I don't have that breakout with the other numbers. This is how it's given from the state, but we can definitely request them to add that. We are seeing cases that are fully vaccinated, and I know people are frustrated with that. One of the things that we are noting is that it's less and that there's less hospitalizations or deaths. And just wanted to be able to present this data. This is something that can be found on the DHS website. It's updated monthly on the 15th of the month. This is the number of people that are fully vaccinated versus one dose. So we have 57% of our population. We continue to vaccinate at LCO, and they have been doing a number of outreaches for vaccine, and we continue to do vaccine appointments on Tuesdays and Fridays. We do give the boosters for Pfizer series, and J&J. And then FDA has approved Moderna and J&J boosters. However, we do have to wait for the immunization, MMWR, which is through the CDC, to come out to give us the specifics with that, and then we will be able to start offering that as well. We've had people calling and asking about that. And people have also been asking about what we're hearing for the approval for 5 to 11-year-olds, and that sounds like that will be the beginning of November. And that is it. Questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Julia?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, hey, Julia, you said that there's a high number of infections for kids under 18. That was the highest level right now. Can you let us know, I mean, how many of those kids are being hospitalized, or how many are dying in the state or in the county?
That's a good question. And we are seeing the spread there, but we are luckily at this point not seeing real serious illness with these kids. So very good question. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because I saw that there's only about 3 minors in the entire state who have died in the last year and a half from COVID. And all 3 of those kids had severe underlying conditions like leukemia. So I think even though the rates of infection are higher amongst kids, they're, you know, generally, unless they have severe underlying conditions, they're probably no worse off than the flu. I think we'd agree on that. So I saw the hospitalization rates, and you put up a number of about 120 versus the numbers of around 250 back in December. So that's about half. About half as many hospitalizations as we had in December at our peak here in the state. So is there really a crisis, or is the hospital system being overwhelmed with these numbers, in your opinion?
It's not necessarily all COVID cases. What we're experiencing right now with the hospitals, what they're telling me, it's difficult to find transfer areas to send out the more critically ill patients. Is that because the CCUs have patients that are in there for longer periods of time because of COVID? They tend to be in longer than people with heart disease who would just have a scheduled surgery. We kind of have a known, 3 to 5 days and they're out of there. We have seen that with COVID cases, they tend to be in there longer. Is that what's bogging down the system? Are there other things going on? That's something that really the Wisconsin Hospital Association can help share with us. I just know that what I've heard from the hospital is that it is taking longer to get patients transferred out. They're not overly bogged down with COVID patients, but they are struggling when it comes to transferring.
Okay, thanks. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I have one more question. So back in August, Ms. Lyons, you said at the Health and Human Services Committee meeting that you haven't seen hardly any cases of reinfection. And then you went on to say that, that natural immunity once you've been infected is really high. But then last month, I think it was Julie McCollum who said that there have been a few cases here in Bonnie, I'm just wondering if you could share with myself and the board exactly how many confirmed cases of reinfection we have seen or you have seen in Sawyer County.
I actually don't have that number in front of me. I believe that it is probably equal to or less than those that have been immunized, that have been and sorry, I can see the look on your face. I'm confusing you. When I say that with reinfection versus breakthrough cases, it's looking that potentially I can say that they're probably about equal. I don't think that there's any higher rates of reinfection than it is with if they've been vaccinated in the past. So depending on your vaccination immunity versus your immunity because you've gotten COVID, just off the top of my head, just thinking about the numbers, it's probably about equal, but I can get more statistics on that specific to our area. I do not have that at my fingertips.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark was next. Mark had a question before I did. Mark had a question.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't understand
Couple
you.
questions. Well, first of all, gentleman spoke during the time that you get to speak, and he brought up if you could have things differentiated as far as how many are vaccinated, how many have only gotten one, and how many are not vaccinated. If you get that information in the future, that'd be great.
I will request that from the state. Again, that's state data that I'm getting, so.
Okay, and then do you know if the hospitals are actually starting to, a lot of, when they do death certificates, most of the people have been just simply stamped COVID. Are they actually starting to put down their real cause of death? Because not everything is COVID.
No, and our rates of COVID cases are only at 1.3%, which is fairly low for our population because we do have a larger population. Every one of our death certificate or every one of our cases, our staff goes through before we report that out. We make sure that they were being treated for COVID, and that was part of the process. So we're really careful on looking at these cases where you don't want to have somebody in who, say, was in the hospital. Well, this isn't the death certificate, but we do this for hospitalizations too. If somebody was in the hospital and they were in for hip surgery, happened to test positive for COVID, we do not say that that's a hospitalization for COVID. We look closely at all those cases.
Okay, and one more thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, because I cannot recall what it was. And it was, I guess that's all I got.
If you come back to it. Ms. Elsa?
Julia, as you know, I'm on the school board also, and we have a problem with the contact tracing where kids are being sent home if they're close contact. Could you tell me why the at-home or like the pharmacy tests are not approved for them to get back into school? We just had a meeting last Monday night, and it was told to me and the rest of the board that the over-the-counter testing, rapid testing were not approved. So therefore, the kids have to wait to get a longer test and can't be in school.
Okay, so the tests need to be proctored, or somebody needs to watch the test, and it can't just be done at home. They need to validate that it is a negative test. That is where the state has come down on the difference between the two. We now are a testing site, and we are working closely with the school for them to get set up. We do have rapid tests, and the school will have rapid tests, so we'll be able to keep those kids or get those kids back in school as soon as possible. It was our goal to have that up and set before school started. Unfortunately, we were not able to become a testing site with the state until just now. But that is the reason it needs to be proctored or a test that's watched.
Yeah, I think this is more of a statement than a question. I guess, as far as the hospitals and transferring you had mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
I think a big part of it, and I think everybody knows, it's that, as far as being able to get people working.
Mhm.
Because say like my father was in the hospital, he wasn't able to get a room because they had transferred people from other hospitals like Duluth to Hayward because they didn't have the personnel to run their hospital. So that's a big part
Yes.
of what's going on also.
And I would agree with that. Because we have a lot of physical beds that are available, but we don't necessarily have the staff. That has been the case pre-COVID. Definitely are seeing it more now.
Mr. Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lyons, Engineer Hallberg broached something that I never really thought of tonight, and that is that he stated that there's only one vaccine that's approved by the FDA. And for those that are on the fence about getting the vaccine, there must be one that's better than the others. I'm assuming we keep baseball statistics about who does the best against left-handed pitching at night. I'm certain we certainly have statistics about which one of these vaccines is the best at warding off this influenza virus or SARS virus. So two-part question. Is only one approved by the FDA? And two, which one's the best one?
Well, we continue to watch. We had very good initial results with Pfizer and Moderna when they were doing the studies. They were fairly equal on that. As we continue to watch, we're seeing some of the immunity waning, and that's where they're coming forward with bringing forward the boosters. Pfizer has been the one that was fully approved by FDA. And we're looking at actually, Mr. Hallberg, we are looking at that because it is fully approved. And we have been looking to see, are we truly giving the fully approved version? Because we have a lot of vaccine that's available in the United States, and we don't know when we'll be getting the fully approved one versus the one that's EUA approved. I know this sounds very confusing to people, but they are just renamed it as the FDA, but it's the same mix that's in the bottles. So I understand what he's talking about there. As for Moderna, that is staying the same. That is not fully FDA approved. That is through an EUA, an emergency use authorization, the same as Johnson & Johnson. We will continue to watch to see when they become fully approved. Again, remember, these are new vaccines. This isn't something that the FDA approves overnight. They want to watch and see what happens. Is there one better than another? It does depend on people's health conditions, where they would get maybe a Moderna or a Pfizer over a J&J, and that would be very specific to them. We were seeing with the J&J that there was a little less immunity initially than with the Pfizer or Moderna. So again, we continue to watch. Everybody's immunity is slightly different in how they respond to the vaccine. Vaccines also, it's not a public health mandate by county or state. It is something that we are making available to the public that wants it. And that is something that we're doing. And I'm not telling somebody you absolutely have to get vaccinated. We as a public health are making it available to people.
Mr. Van Etten?
It's not a very good answer for you, Mr. Olson, but that's the best I got for right now.
Real quick, out of all these graphs and bars and everything that's been going on for the last year and a half, the news doesn't report it. People ask all the time, so I'm going to ask for them. Is there any kind of study? Is anybody keeping track of any of the people that got vaccines and then died?
Died from the vaccine or just died in general? Because there are people that have died in general. I can go and see. There has not been anything that's come out specifically. We do know that with the Pfizer vaccine, with young kids in that 12 to 18 year range, one of the risk factors that is pericarditis or myocarditis, but not death. So those are the things that we kind of watch for with this.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have one more if that's okay. Ms. Lyons, you said something that was a little bit alarming, talking about the hospital beds that we have here in Sawyer County. You said that we have lots of hospital beds, but we don't have the staff to support them. So I guess that's a little bit alarming when
I wanted, I'm
Yes.
talking about hospital beds in general. I am not speaking about Hayward Hospital. When we go to
Okay.
transfer beds out, like I know because I've worked at other hospitals that are larger, we tend to not staff those beds totally up. There are beds that are available because they can't, number one, they can't afford to staff fully for all of those beds. If those beds aren't being filled, those hospitals will eventually close. So it's kind of a game where they're kind of going back and forth. You can hit those high peak census, and then you're struggling with getting enough staff that will come in extra to cover those shifts. So I
Okay.
did not mean to say anything about Hayward Hospital.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for the clarification. So do we, though, in Sawyer County have a shortage of healthcare workers in general, to your knowledge?
I know that, I'm not sure about the hospital situation. I do know for home care and care services to keep people in their homes and not have to go to like a long-term care living, we do have a shortage there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I
Mr.
can kind of
Hellwig?
speak for that question that Mr. Betcher had. When recently, when my father was in the hospital, I spoke to some of the staff, one of the doctors, about how the staffing was. And she actually said that we're fortunate at the Hayward Hospital that we are staffed rather well. I mean, like what I was talking about is other hospitals in the area, like in Duluth, Superior, around us, have been requesting our beds because they don't have the staffing, but our hospital is staffed rather well. But also what Mrs. Lyons said, as far as the at-home care, that is so true. It's very, very hard to find someone to care for an elderly person at home instead of getting them to assisted living. You just can't find them. Thank you.
Does that everybody know? Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
help. Okay, zoning, Mr. Buckles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The zoning committee held its monthly public hearing last Friday. The hearing saw large numbers of gravel pit renewal and continued discussion on potential ordinance changes. The committee continues to see large amount of potential rezones and conditional use permits. From a permit standpoint, the zoning department is at 453 land use permits, which is 33 higher than the same time last year, and 352 sanitary permits, which is 90 higher than the same time last year. We haven't seen these types of numbers in the last 15 years. We have one rezone case tonight and potential adoption of the comp plan update. If there's no additional questions, I'll turn it over to Jay for present of the cases. Ends my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, County Board of Supervisors. We have one rezone case tonight, number 21-009, Charles and Susan Baker, parcel 004-838-101-403. This is a 10-acre total lot split zone between industrial 1 and agricultural 1. The request is to rezone 6.8 acres of this parcel to residential recreational 2. And then it would be divided into 3 parcels to give a lot to each of the children in which they could then build a house on. The remaining industrial acreage would then be resurveyed with the adjacent parcel by the same owner, and the resulting proposed rezone would be compliant with the zone districts for lot configuration. The reason the RR2, the residential 2 zone district, was chosen is that there is existing RR2 zone property in the immediate vicinity. The most other common zone districts in that vicinity is agricultural 1. The town of Coudray, as part of their comp plan, shows this subject rezone request area as future industrial and forestry residential nearby. The industrial zone district is initially there because there wasn't an existing sawmill, which is no longer in operation. And there's also a cell tower in an adjacent property, which is also zoned industrial 1. There were 4 opinion letters sent out to property owners within 300 feet. 3 of those letters were returned, 1 with objections, 2 with no objections. Those were read into record. The town of Coudray approved the rezone request on September 8th at their town board meeting. The Sawyer County Zoning Committee public hearing was on September 17th and was recommended to approve to the county board of a vote 5-0 with findings of facts. It would not be damaging to the rights of others or property values. It would be compatible with the surrounding land uses and zone districts in the area.
Thank you. Do we have a motion
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
to
Second.
approve? Mr. Buckles, is that a motion to approve? Okay. Mr. Olson did the second.
My district.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Everybody in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? None. Motion passed.
Next, we have the comprehensive plan update. The comprehensive plan is a formal document that is intended to guide the physical, social, and economic development of local governmental units. The plan is an official document, meaning that is designated to be adopted by the local governing body. The overall goal of the Sawyer County Comp Plan is to maintain and improve the quality of life for people in Sawyer County. To do this, the overall objective is to guide our future in the manner consistent with the elements, goals, objective, actions, and to identify programs contained in the document. To meet this objective, the overall action is to adopt and implement the comprehensive plan and continue to strengthen and work cooperatively with adjacent and overlapping jurisdictions. The statutory requirement for the 10-year update is laid out in Wisconsin Chapter 66.1001. This process was started over a year and a half ago with the formation of the ad hoc comprehensive plan development committee. This committee was selected from different demographics and different areas throughout the county with the help of Northwest Regional Planning. I'm here tonight to present the draft updated plan for approval. These plans are comprehensive in that they address many components and elements within the community. There are 9 elements that the comp plan shall address as identified by the law. Those are issues and opportunities, housing, transportation, utilities and community facilities, agricultural, natural, and cultural resources, economic development, intergovernmental cooperation, land use, and implementation. Furthermore, the comprehensive plan law identifies consistency requirements for official mapping, zoning and land division, shorelands and wetlands, and also state-funded grants to assist in local planning efforts. This update has been available to the public throughout the entire process through several public meeting procedures and notices. Specific elements were sent out to all Sawyer County department heads, other agency contacts, and the Coudray tribe. Also, every town within the county was sent their existing and future land use maps for edits as part of the update process. The official public hearing was held on Monday, October 4th, at which time the Sawyer County Comprehensive Plan Development Committee made the recommendation for approval of the comp plan update to the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors. It is now up to the county board to either adopt the comprehensive plan update or remand it back to the committee for additional research and corrections. I do want to personally thank Jason Lauman and Emily Nelson from Northwest Regional Planning, and also the ad hoc committee members who really stuck through this the whole way. Mark Olson, Phil Neese, Linda Zilmer, Kay Wilson, Steve Kelsey, Nita Kemp, and the late Troy Morgan. If there are any additional questions, I can attempt to answer them at this time.
Is that Dale?
Jay, you know, we talk about, you just talk about cooperation with other jurisdictions. And every town has a comp plan. Is there anything in this comp plan that's diametrically opposed to towns? Because the previous plan actually said on its beginning page that it was an amalgamation of all the town's plans put together. That way there was never going to be an issue with the county's plan being in opposition with the town's plans. Now, the towns were mailed maps, but they really weren't asked to participate. And we can all disagree about that, but they weren't allowed to participate or invited to participate. We were just mailed this and it's 200 plus pages long. Is there any instances in this plan where they are in diametric opposition?
Not that I'm aware of. So there was the option at the start of this process is whether we wanted to have an all-encompassing county comprehensive plan that would kind of set specifically in the future land use and existing land use sections to have a comprehensive overview that would match up with each of those specific types of districts, be it like a forestry residential district or a light agricultural district. That was ultimately chose to go a different way, and that we were going to accept each individual town's future and existing land use maps. When the maps were sent out to the towns, that was something provided by Northwest Regional Planning. And I do know several other towns did have edits that did make it into the final comprehensive plan. So if the town of Meteor didn't get that message, I guess I would look back at Northwest Regional Planning to see if there wasn't clear direction from them as to implement those types of changes. But as far as any type of diametric changes between what's part of a town comprehensive plan and ultimately the Sawyer County comprehensive plan, no, we would have been taking your additional maps.
I don't just represent the town of Meteor. I represent actually 4 towns, at least portions thereof. And so how many towns actually did respond to this and give input?
There was 4, I believe, that had changes to their future land use maps and some corrections as far as what the county had for existing land use.
About 25% then.
Yep.
I'm looking at this, it was 200 pages and, I still work. So this was a long role for me. I would like another month to read over this.
Anybody else have any comments? What's the pleasure of the board? Somebody want to make a motion to approve or not approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the comprehensive plan as received tonight.
Thank you. We have
I'll
a
second.
motion.
Second, that as a draft, right?
This would be for the final approval.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Okay, did you get the second from Ms. Pettit, I believe? Ms. Pettit, okay. Any further discussion? Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion passed. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Jay. Do you have anything else for zoning? Okay, thank you. Mr. Schlender, I believe you're up for public safety.
Mr. Chairman, the Public Safety Committee met on October 7th. A couple of issues came up. One is we have received a report from the ambulance director who had indicated some concern with what has been proposed as a federal mandate for vaccination. His concern stemmed from what is staffing concerns. Sawyer County is already experiencing a shortage and an inability to fill positions. And he was waiting for some decision from somewhere on the state level regarding the application of what these vaccinations would require. He had indicated that the hook that was being offered, and this is the federal government. So I say federal government because I don't know what specific agency or what entity or what mandate is being proposed, but I do know that he said that there is a concern that if there was a required vaccination mandate, that there would be potential staffing shortages because some people would no longer be eligible to remain employed in the ambulance service. This led to some discussion about contractual obligations, position of the county, and it is a concern of that committee, but I'm not going to speak for the whole committee because the committee had different opinions. But there is a concern that if we as a county have hired somebody to perform a service, and at the time of their hire, we laid out what their expectations were, and we entered into an agreement, so to speak, and they performed those services, and then at a later date, not at the time of renewal, but at a later date, we added an additional condition for them to remain employed, and it was something that was required, but not consensual. I have an issue with that. And so we will be revisiting this at the public safety meeting, and I will have something to report. In other news, our jail is currently at 75% capacity. We still have staffing shortages. That is an ongoing issue, but we have received a report that there are some favorable candidates that are in the pipeline, and so maybe some relief is coming. I will bring this up every single time because we need to acknowledge the work that these jailers are doing to meet also statutory requirements, and some of them are being forced to work. Well, I would not say forced to work. Some of them are upholding their duty that they've taken on to the extreme by making sure that we maintain statutory minimums and that they should be recognized for their work and their sacrifice. Under the same title, Mr. Chairman, is also the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. I chair that as well. Today is the day that that council met for this month. And to report back to this board, the TAD grant that had been of some consternation among some of my colleagues has been submitted. It has been refocused as a planning grant because at the time of submission, Sawyer County did not have a fully operational diversion program, which was one of the things that the grant was intended to fund. There was some concern among some of our colleagues here that somehow some kind of tertiary connection between a drug court and the funding for our second courtroom, that somehow this was going to be disruptive. I am here to speak brilliantly of Justice Point and of our ongoing crusade to provide services as well as the criminal justice system needs that we have for this county, that we are fully in compliance with every statutory requirement that has been put out by the state of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin legislature, and that we are on track to meet all the requirements and so that we can build and complete this second courtroom. One of the things that came out of today's meeting is we have a pilot program for a diversion program that is set up, and that the district attorney's office is in communication with Justice Point to identify individuals that would be eligible for and as well as participate in the diversion program that would provide services to deal with drugs, alcohol, and other needs that would not normally be addressed if they were incarcerated. The judge has indicated also his willingness to participate, and we will have a better report of not only the people that are participating in the Justice Point monitoring program, which is the pre-sentencing component that allows for them to be out of jail, alleviating our jail population, and available for services, and that the diversion program will work post-sentencing, and that we will have people that will be in the arena or be able to access services to address some of the underlying conditions that cause them to use drugs and other means to alleviate their stress and concern. Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Elwood?
Mr. Schlender.
I love questions.
As this federal mandate that you were talking about, I believe you got a resolution that's kind of working on this situation, but as a county, do we have to uphold the federal mandate?
That was one of the questions that was raised at public safety as well as admin. I can't speak for the admin because I'm only a member and not the chair. The There are some among our colleagues who wish that this issue be discussed so that we have an ability to be fully informed as to what our responsibilities as representatives of our districts. I am of one of those people who believes that we definitely need to have a conversation and that we need to assure county employees that we stand with them in their ability to do their jobs. My concern, and as it was presented at that meeting, was that it's contemplated that this mandate was to require that people be vaccinated against COVID, and that if they aren't, then they would not be eligible, or that the county would, or the state would suffer some financial penalty in terms of reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid. That concerns me because if it's a reimbursement, that means we've already expended funds in furtherance of an obligation that we've met. And if the federal government's going to withhold the reimbursement, then to me that sounds like they're playing with something that's already been obligated. The second part was this mandate has contemplated an exception so that you could remain employed and not be vaccinated if you have what they call sincere religious belief, which doesn't even begin to upset me on a level that I can't even articulate. I have no idea how we're going to determine what a sincere religious belief is. The other one is if they can produce medical information that would justify them not being able to have COVID. My question to the committee then was, if we're going to have exceptions already that are going to be subjective, why not let choice be one of the exceptions as well? I mean, liberty it resounds to the Constitution of both the state, federal, and tribal. And I want to make sure that it's understood that the tribal constitution is going to be impacted by a federal mandate. And that if there is another means that we could incentivize or somehow encourage, because I'm not against vaccines, I would strongly encourage, I am vaccinated, and that was my choice that I made. And if someone chooses not to be vaccinated, they should not be ostracized, punished, or had their economic livelihood impacted by that. And so those were some of the issues that came up in response to your question, Mr. Helwig.
I just want to say that I had gone back and listened to that, and I was really hoping that that would be on the agenda so they could be discussed. It is really a very big issue right now. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Schlender?
Yes, I do. Mr.
Okay, go
Schlender,
ahead, Don.
regarding, you said that the tribal constitution will be impacted by the federal mandate also. Is there
Yes.
not individuals that are working for the tribal health clinic that have lost their jobs due to not being vaccinated? So how will this protect those individuals if it's already happened?
Supervisor Pettit, I need to speak very clearly about this. I am the supervisor for District 5. I am unaware of the tribal operations that are currently underway. I am aware that some entities have implemented the mandate because there is a financial consequence for not being in compliance. I am not in a position to discuss nor even debate the implications on the mandate. My comment was, when the federal government makes its decision, state governments are covered under what is called Article 6 of the federal constitution. It's called the Supremacy Clause. And the treaties that the tribes have signed has created what is known as a trust responsibility, so that tribal governments operate, but they operate under the plenary authority of the federal government. So if Congress decides to do something, tribes are nearly helpless in being able to respond. So when we talk about constitutional implications and taking choice away from people in terms of vaccinations, I want to make sure that we freely speak of citizens of the state of Wisconsin. We speak freely of citizens of the federal government, but we also have tribal citizens that are also going to be impacted. So I'm not speaking to the operations, I'm speaking to the breadth of impact. If a federal mandate is implemented, that it's going to go more than just state and federal.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
responding to that,
clarification.
Mr. Schlender. Okay, any other concerns, questions? Okay, moving on to Public Works. Mr. Kinsley?
Courthouse remodel update. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We continue to meet. We'll be meeting in another week. We have the minutes of the meetings. We're moving forward. We're anticipating being able to put out bids by the end of December. Anybody have any questions on the minutes or what's going on with that? If not, we'll move on to letter B, hangar lease sale, discussion of possible action. The letter A, hangar lease documents. They have a copy of the documents there. At the Public Works Committee meeting, we made a motion to waiver the right of first refusal. That's the first step of making the process go forward. So we'll have to have a motion by the board to do that.
Sure. What exactly is the motion, please?
For the first right refusal. The county does not want to get in owning the lease or renting out the lease.
I would second Mr. Duffy's denial of the right of first refusal, that we do not want to lease that hangar of Mr. Burton's.
Okay, so the motion is to,
We don't want to release it.
okay, any further discussion? I'm sorry?
Could you ask Lynn to read that back, please?
Yes, I was going to, because I'm not certain I understand it either.
I'm not sure I've got this correct now with the two different. I have a motion by Helwood to waive the first right of refusal of the hangar lease. Was Mr. Duffy?
And was there, who seconded that? Was there a second? Mr. Olson seconded that. Okay. Does that clarify things? Okay, thank you, Mr. Schlender.
So what does a yes vote do and what does a no vote do?
If I may, the yes vote is saying that Sawyer County is putting forward the waiver of a right to first refusal. We do not want to have that hangar. We want it to get leased out so we can continue to receive revenue from it. Does that help explain a little bit?
Just a quick question, Mr. Kinsley, and your feelings are that this is a good thing for us to pass.
Pardon?
Your feelings are this is appropriate and good
Yes.
for us to pass. Okay, thank you. That is good for me. Any further discussion? Okay, everybody, does this require a roll call vote? No. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 2 and number 3 are kind of tied together. It's the original lease is an exhibit and also the personal guarantee is the second part. So we'll need a motion for approval for assignment to sell the hangar lease.
Okay, we need a motion for approval.
I still make that motion.
I'll say it.
Motion by Mr. Helmig, seconded by Mr. Duffy. Any further questions or discussion? Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Everybody opposed, say same sign. Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board. Letter C, we have ATV, UTV route resolution. This has been discussed quite a bit in Public Works. The reason it's here is we brought it up at Public Works last month, this October month, and there's some townships that are looking at that they do not want to approve ATV routes. So they asked the county to move forward without the townships, and we chose not to do that. We want the township to approve ATV routes, and when it's approved at town level, it'll come to the Public Works Committee. And this is just reinforcing that. So we'll have to have a motion for that also, please.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Duffy. Could somebody read the motion in full for me, please?
The motion was to approve the resolution, the ATV routes.
To not go ahead with the approval of the ATV routes? Is that what I understood?
No, to approve the resolution developing the secure, sustainable ATV routes. That
Mr.
Right,
Kinsley,
Mr.
could you
Kinsley?
clarify this for us, please?
Yes, but Mr. Wilson's got a comment first, I think.
Maybe that would help clarify.
Go ahead, give it a shot.
I was at the meeting.
Yes, you were.
This is a double up. So basically what this resolution says is the county can't just approve a route. And these are not trails. These are routes on roads. Be they town roads, be they county highways, anything like that. The county cannot just supersede a town. The county has to have town approval along with county approval in order to do this. That's what this resolution is stating. And we modified this from its original form to include tribal informational purposes. So they have the ability to weigh in on it too, because there has been an instance where roads are approved by a town without tribal knowledge, even though it was a completely tribal road. So we thought that was important to do that, and this resolution also states that. So it basically says all parties have to approve, not just the town, not just the county, but both.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Okay, is that understood by everybody now? Okay, we have the motion and the second. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And that takes care of
Mr.
yours.
Chairman, should we have Mr. Kinsley read the resolution into the record?
Not necessary at this time. Okay, Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one action item before us, which is the approval of the October land bid sales. I want to point out that in the summary that the LCO tribe is buying about a little over $300,000 of land. I think that would mean that this land would come off the tax rolls. If my numbers are right, that would mean we'd lose about $1,100 a year in taxes. We would get $300,000 now, but lose $1,100 a year in taxes. I'm stating as a fact, not an opinion. I don't have an opinion on it.
Do we have a motion one way or the other?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the October land bid sales as read.
Okay, Ms. Essel, did you want to second that?
I'll second that, but I also was wondering if you were just giving us A through E as information, but you weren't going to read those?
No, at least my tablet doesn't have those on the agenda.
Did you want me to read them? Oh, gotcha. Mine is an old copy, forget it.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
you had the old copy also. Apparently only
Okay.
the cool kids get the new copy.
Okay,
Okay, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Did we vote on it?
no, we haven't voted on
Okay.
it yet. We had a motion and a second. And I was asking for any further comments. Hearing none, everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Good. Health and Human Services Board Chair report. I understand he was too lazy and didn't prepare one. Okay, moving right along. Okay, Health and Human Services Board did meet last Tuesday. We had an update from the LCO Health Center saying that they had 30 positive cases and they're continuing vaccine clinics. They're doing a lot of good work out there. I'm working alongside Ms. Lyons and the Sawyer County Public Health, as they have since the day the pandemic started. So that's really a good thing. Okay, Ms. Johnson provided an overview of the meal programs from the Senior Resource Center. All of the Health and Human Services committees filed their reports. Mr. Hoff talked about the settlement that is still coming regarding the opioid settlement. We still don't know what or how much that will affect Sawyer County. But we did learn at the Counties Association convention that because Sawyer County was one of the counties that piled onto this litigation early, and Wisconsin was the earliest, that Wisconsin counties will be receiving some of the highest payoffs in the country. So that's a good thing. And then Ms. Lyons provided the COVID ID update, and that was the end. So moving on. Oops, where are we at? 13, 14. And you wanted that, you want, pardon? Oh, that's the van for Senior Resource Center, right? Yeah. Okay, we need approval of a grant, to apply for a grant to help the Senior Resource Center purchase its biannual senior resource bus. It's our share, county share, that would be $16,000.
I make a motion to approve said resolution.
Okay. Second. Any further question?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chair. Is that, you said biannual, which I think means every 2 years. Is that what that means? Or do you mean semi-annual, meaning twice per year?
No, every other year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, did we discuss this at Health and Human Services?
Yes,
We did?
it was during Joey Johnson's report.
Is it available countywide?
Is it available? Yeah, it's no secret. I mean,
So it can go down to.
oh, what do you mean
Winkle's-
count? What is, I thought you meant was the grant information available?
No, is the
countywide?
bus available countywide?
No, this by grant rules can only within a 5-mile radius of Hayward.
It's called the Dale Olson bus.
Okay, any more questions or concerns? Is this a roll call vote? No, okay.
I have my light on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead, Ms.
okay.
Cecil.
I'm just wondering, so it didn't operate last year or this year, so because of COVID, so why are we getting a new one?
It operated.
They didn't pick people up because of COVID. And the Sawyer County, the senior center was closed and they weren't picking people up because they didn't have lunches. So I'm just wondering why we need a new van if it wasn't usable. I wasn't at your meeting, so that's
Okay.
why I have a question.
Yeah, I guess we did, the COVID pandemic just put an old bus, just let an old bus rest that was worn out and gave us a chance to fundraise on our part to cover our part of the purchase of the van, bus. And that's what happened. And now we're getting a new van. The old one is shot.
But should it be called something else? So it's just the senior resource bus?
Yes,
Is that correct? But it doesn't, it only services Hayward then?
that's by the definition and rules of the grant, yes.
So we're making all of Sawyer County pay for it?
Yes, because this route, this bus route that it takes in the city frees up the other bus company, Nemacoggin Transit, to provide greater service to the rest of the county. And the Senior Resource Center provides Meals on Wheels and pickup meals to the entire county. Yeah. Okay, everybody ready for the vote then? Everybody in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed?
Yes.
Motion, okay, motion passed. Where are we at now? I lost my place here. Okay, but finance wanted to move to between 17 and 18. So we'll go right to that.
Finance chair report.
Yes, he wanted to move to after.
Yeah, just that one item, but he's got other things to say.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give the Finance Committee Chair report. We just took action at the start of the meeting to move item 14A down to item 18A. It would be more appropriate to consider borrowing money from the state trust funds after we hear the budget presentation from Mr. Hoff. The other large item that the Finance Committee heard was a executive summary from Clifton Larson Allen on the 2020 audit. On page 2 of the executive summary, you'll see that we have a clean opinion. That means that all of our books and records were presented in accordance with general accepted government accounting. That's the highest opinion we can get. I would be willing to answer any questions that somebody may have on the executive audit summary.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Kinsley. Can we have a second? Mr. Buckles, the second. Now any concerns, conversation, questions? Did you have your light on, Mr. Schlinger? Yeah.
What's the motion?
To accept the draft of the audit. Okay.
Just accept it.
No, not the trust fund. This is just the audit, correct?
Right.
Okay. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passed.
Mr. Chairman, that
Please
includes my portion of the Finance Committee Chair report, pending Mr. Haas' presentation of the budget later on.
Okay. Move on to economic development.
Mr. Chairman, the Economic Development and Agricultural Committee met on October 11th. Among the issues that were discussed was a concern. We had a resolution that was presented by Mr. Betcher that addressed the concerns of having vaccinations having some kind of economic impact in the county. That committee voted to advance that to the administration committee, which serves as the oversight for the committees in general. It was also assigned to legal counsel to provide feedback, of which those edits then would be incorporated. That's basically what happened at Econ. And then there was a discussion of the ATV and the UTV trails are, we actually have a pretty solid mechanism in place to maintain the trails, and that we're having a very good year in terms of their participation. That Sawyer County trails are actually pretty appreciated. They're extensive. They're talking about different routes. I think that's kind of along the lines what Mr. Olson had talked about, routes and trails. And that we also had a report from Ms. Beckman in terms of the media exposure that we've been, other marketing activities that have been happening, and that the Hayward Lakes Convention Bureau has been really busy in terms of advancing the economic interest of the county. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item 16, virtual meeting policy, discussion and possible action. Who gets to start that?
I would, as a member of that committee, I would, in the
Please
interest
do.
of making this a little more exciting, I would lead it off with Ms. Roker to read and speak about the updates.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Good evening, everyone. So as noted, the resolution making the amendments to the board rules, virtual attendance policy went back to administration, and there was a more in-depth discussion on certain elements. And what you have in front of you, if you look at starting at page 89 of your agenda packet, is the red line version of the rule. So actually on page 89, that's some just meeting update information. But in terms of substance, the committee recommended adding a presumption that all county board members attend the county board meetings in person. So there is a recognition that attendance by virtual means may be necessary, but again, reaffirming that there is a presumption that county board members attend board meetings in person. To take a little side step very quickly, one of the goals of this this amendment to your board rules was to make provisions regarding board meetings and committee meetings consistent. So as I go through these, and I mention that there is a presumption that board members are going to be present at board meetings, that same presumption then is also duplicated for committee meetings. Excuse me, the next item that the committee recommended a revision to was with respect to providing notice versus obtaining permission from either the board chair for a board meeting or a committee chair for a committee meeting. So the committee recommended that the permission element be removed and that it be noticed to the board chair and the county clerk, or again, in circumstances of a committee meeting, that it's the committee chair and the county clerk. The last, let me make sure I'm on the right page. And again, the important point being that the changes made to the board, the elements that apply to the board as rules, were also made to the committee components. So now you have consistency between the rules that apply to the board meetings and the rules that apply to committee meetings. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Who's that one, Miss Hessel?
Okay,
Miss Hessel, yeah.
all right. I just was going to clarify that she was made to be committee member. So thank you for not including they.
Yeah, I'll make a brief comment on that. You can lay that one completely on me. That was a drafting point when I did she. As I was drafting, I was using the term board member, committee member. It seemed like a lot. So I usually use they and not he, she. But then I sometimes get scolded because that's poor grammar by saying they if you're talking to an individual. So I tried to just make it a safe way. And I certainly didn't mean to, cause any disrespect or have any sort of alternate motive for doing that. So as I was revising, I thought it would just be a little bit easier to make it clear.
Okay. We have Mr. Schlender.
The other thing that we, was the lifting of the cap of 3 meetings. And so we have a hard rule about, I think you're only allowed 3 meetings virtual. and that we were going to remove the cap so that there was just a presumption that people would be in person, and that if they weren't, then they would notify the chair. And if they were unable to get a hold of the chair, they could notify either Mr. Hoff or Ms. Fitch, which is our normal thing, because we have been instructed, trained, and reinforced that if we send emails and it goes to more than one person, we're in violation of open meetings laws, and then everyone doesn't want to use their email address. So the other thing that was discussed as well as this is there is a concern with Zoom participation. Not that Zoom participation is bad, but for someone who's chairing a meeting, and I chair committee meetings as well, it's difficult to track the conversation when you have someone on Zoom jumping in, because under Robert's rules, which is advisory and not binding, you're supposed to be recognized by the chair before you address the board or the floor or the committee. On Zoom, that's difficult because it's difficult to raise your hand when you're on a TV screen, and so some are encouraged to participate because they want to, and some, just jump in and say what they're going to say with an open mic. The other part that's difficult with Zoom is we want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's concerns. We have people that are concerned about COVID. We've got people that are concerned about travel time and whatnot. And so we try to be respectful of that. But we also have to make sure that we have discipline and that make sure that we control the mics. That you have open mic or a hot mic, that makes it very disruptive and difficult for conducting a meeting. And then again, when we do, in the rare occasions that we do go to executive session, the person who is participating, the supervisor is participating being Zoom, needs to attest that the room is secure, that they're not sitting in the middle of McDonald's getting their order, or at a conference or whatever, and that the information that's being conveyed, sometimes we have litigation issues and whatnot, and that needs to be confidential. And so those were some of the concerns that were raised. They're not articulated in that, but if we move forward with this change, that is a discussion point that we need to have, so that we have this innate desire to be the second on a motion, and so people will just jump in and say whatever, and that's exciting to watch. It's difficult to regulate as a chair, and so we need to work on that, so that the ones who are present should be given the first deference to be recognized to speak to the motion, and if there isn't, then we open it up to the Zoom participants, and that way we have a little bit of order. And those were my thoughts. Ms. Roker, you can clarify or change, or Mr. Schluter, or Mr. Kinsley, anything else?
Go ahead, Ms. Roker.
Nope, nothing else unless there's questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Go on.
Did you have something, Dale?
Mr. Hellman.
I was going to make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion. And Mr. Peters is seconding it. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Olson.
Just, Ms. Roker, this is wonderful, and I do believe that you should be here and face your constituents and everybody else. So what happens when you don't do it?
That's a good question. What was built into the rule is a recognition that all board rules have to comply with, and Mr. Schlender touched on that. So if there's non-compliance with this rule, it would be like a non-compliance of any rule, that it essentially is bounced to, I shouldn't say bounced, it becomes an issue for the board chair. Then the board chair, I believe it's at line 87, if there's non-compliance or abuse of the rule, the board chair then reviews this rule and the expectations with that particular board member. And then if there's continued non-compliance, anyone could call the ethics committee. So it would be similar to enforcement of any other board rule.
So you're saying it's an ethics violation, and you would go before the ethics committee if we don't follow the rules as set forth in this resolution?
Only to the extent that the county has decided that not following your board rules and policies as a whole, not just this one, but as a whole, is deemed a violation, an ethics violation or a non-performance of a public duty. So just as if there was a violation of another board rule, if someone felt that to call an ethics committee meeting was warranted for that violation of a board rule, it could be done so within the process of the rules. I don't know what that process is.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Schlender.
So to clarify, it wouldn't be a violation per se, it would be a complaint. And the reason why it was given to the ethics is because they do have that jurisdiction, but it was supposed to be a objective body to hear what the concerns were in terms of participation. Everybody who accepts this office accepts it with the knowledge that they're going to carry out to the best of their abilities. And so the best of their abilities is really the key word. And if they can't make the meetings, then they have a responsibility to the best of their abilities, communicate their inability. If they fail to do that, well, then they've failing their oath that they've taken. And they're actually, it's a disrespect to the other ones who are carrying this out, because we don't individually represent, we collectively represent. And so there was two parts to that. One was we needed there had to be some way to kind of do that so it wasn't the chair. We wanted to remove the permission part, because that really bugged me in terms of someone telling, oh, well, you know, it's, you have to be here. Well, no, I got to go home and take care of my wife. I can't be, no, you got to be here. And that didn't work. Second one was making sure that it wasn't the chair who was granting permission, all of a sudden now had to review the conduct of that person who wasn't participating. And so the ethics committee, which is, it's convened only when called, would then hear that information from the committee chair and then, you know, inform the other committee member. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Thankfully, we do not have any of that kind of problem. I mean, everyone is here for the most part.
Okay, is there any further questions?
I
Anybody
have a
online?
question.
Go
I have
ahead.
a question. Rebecca, what are we currently operating underneath?
Excuse me. So the current board rule, there's a different section for board meetings and there's a different section for committee meetings. So I'll just stick with the board rule to make it a little bit easier. And so that is set forth in rules. It's 228 to I think 210, which currently states that a board member can attend virtually up to 3 times per year. That was suspended as of September 16th, I believe. And so therefore this rule would then take the place of that current rule. And then, you know, obviously go into effect today or upon passage. Does that answer your question, Ms. Pettit?
So we're not going to be operating under the pandemic suspension any longer.
Correct, because that actually already expired on September 16th.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passed. Okay, I have received a request to take a 5-minute break. So, but we'll come back in 5 minutes.
Clarification, that's 5 consecutive minutes?
No, for you, one at a time.
All right, thank you. County Administrator's Report. We've been doing budget all day, all the time, so we'll do that next. Just a couple other things to report on. We did receive a couple of the broadband grants that we had applied for, or that were applied for, so that's good news. Also, the sheriff received a letter from Treasurer Diane Inns announcing her retirement at the end of the year. So we'll have that to deal with. And we'll talk to the board chair when he returns regarding that. And then a point of clarification, just on the opioid settlement. The next step in the process is I had to register on a website so that we get information from the Attorney General when that's prepared, and that will be brought probably next month before this board. More information about the process and the dollars and those sorts of things. But to clarify, Wisconsin counties, we're early in the process. We won't get the most money, but counties will get a higher percentage of the share of the money that we get in Wisconsin. So that legislation that passed earlier this year, a couple months ago, allowed Wisconsin counties to receive 70% and the state 30% of the funds that Wisconsin receives. So that puts us in a good position to help deal with the opioid crisis when we see those funds. So that is good news. So I'll wrap up my report and get right into the budget, which I'm sure we're all anxious to peruse here. The remaining budget timeline, obviously, we submitted the budget for publication in the newspaper as required by statute last week. Tonight, I am presenting the administrator's budget to the county board. At this point then, the budget is yours to do as you deem appropriate. So as we walk through some of these things, if you want to make changes, it's certainly your prerogative to do so. So after tonight, we will have that public hearing next Thursday evening, October 28th. We've got another round of committee meetings then in November, followed by the budget adoption in early November, Tuesday, November 9th. So as part of that budget adoption, there'll be the pay plan structure, the authorized FTEs, our fee schedule, anything that you change in the budget, those will need to be motions and adopted into the budget so that when you adopt the budget then on that evening, it incorporates all of your changes that you may have. This is just a rundown of the total budget. So the expenditures and the general fund might be a little hard to see, but we'll get this put on the website as well. But the general fund is made up of several different departments and areas. So the general fund budget for 2022 is 16.6 million. And the funding for these expenditures, I don't have the revenues listed here, but the revenues come from, the user fees, revenue generated, state and federal aid, grants received, and tax levy. So the portion that we're mainly concerned with is the tax levy and how that affects the taxpayers in the county. So in the general fund, 7 million is used or generated from tax levy to pay for those general fund operations. Carrying on with some other funds, so that 7 million of levy from the general fund. In addition to that, we've got health and human services, debt service, capital improvements, highway, and some other miscellaneous funds. So the total tax levy for the $43 million budget, the tax levy is going to be about $13 million. And we'll look a little bit more detail at what that looks like. So again, the proposed levy, that $13 million is an increase of about 5% over last year's levy. Again, that levy is the amount of money that we'll receive in taxes. So that has gone up due to mainly, the debt that we have in addition to some operating expenses. And we'll go into more detail about that too. But as we looked last year, we laid out that plan when we started to issue that short-term debt to pay for some capital items. We said, well, we had some up and downs earlier, and we said, well, let's smooth that out so we don't have, a lot of fluctuation. Let's plan a little bit more into the future so that we can keep that rate rather steady. So last year we had about a 5% increase in spending, and this year we're at 5.1, which is in line with what we talked about last year. So we're trying to stick to this plan as we laid out last year, and we've got a couple of years of that increase because we've got this huge building project that we have that we incur a lot of debt for. And rather than have it spike all at one time, we're building that into the budget. And so that we can kind of keep that even and then hopefully decrease in the future as we level off. So a little bit more detail on that levy. There's the levy limit that we always talk about. So there's, we take the base from last year. We add our net new construction of $79,000. We add the debt levy increase. So that's not the total debt service that we have each year, but that's the increase from last year. So it gives us a new base of $11,176,000 as the operating budget. In addition to that, we have the special purpose levy. Those are things outside that levy limit, such things as the library service, the bridge and culvert aids, and the EMS costs. So that gives us a total levy of $13,027,084, which again is about that 5% increase over last year's expenditures. The budget summary, this is the adjustments that we made to get down to the levy limits. We start the budget process by asking departments, are there any changes in your operations? And they submit budgets. We talk then with each department, Mike and I, talk with departments, go over their budgets, make some changes so that we can get under that levy limit. A couple of the significant items, obviously, is the Health and Human Services budget, the out-of-county placements, which we recognize in the budget, but our funding with general fund balance applied to balance that budget. And we talked a lot about that in Health and Human Services about, can we cut services? Is that the time to do it? Or should we use some of the fund balance to offset some of those costs until we get those under control? Other significant issues, we've had good revenue in sales tax and forestry revenue. So that's good news. Obviously in 20 and 21, we were worried about the economy and the whatnot. So it's good that that has come around and we've set records, in sales tax revenue last year and this year. So that's looking good. Again, the levy, the top portion there is the amounts under the levy limit. And below you'll see, the special purpose levies, and we talk about the libraries and the EMS and the local bridge aids. Again, that 13 million, just a little bit more detail and a breakdown of, the percentage of the budget on the top there. General fund is about half of our budget, and then the other miscellaneous departments and funds. EMS levy, this is the portion that is outside of the levy limits because we do have a countywide ambulance service. We are allowed to pay for that outside the levy limits as a benefit to the entire county. So that rate, or the tax rate due to the EMS levy, is up slightly from 33 cents to 34.8 cents per thousand evaluation. The main difference there is last year we didn't purchase an ambulance because we had to buy some cardiac monitors. That was a change in technology that the other ones were obsolete, and so we were forced to buy those. So we foregone the purchase of an ambulance last year, and so that 160,000 this year kind of bumps that up a little bit this year. Library service, this is another thing that's outside the levy limits. On this chart, you can see the 2022 numbers for those libraries. The Weiss Library had a request for 220,000 in my budget to you. I've kept that the same at 200,000. The Winter Library and LCO Library, those are the numbers that they requested. The lower portions are all library submissions that are by formula through statutes, and those numbers are requested and in the budget. So you'll see on the far right, there is a statute that requires counties to fund libraries to a certain extent, and those are the statutory amounts that are required us to pay to the libraries in the upper portion there. And so it's your prerogative to set that amount at your discretion. We do fund other organizations that are funded with operating levy. Sawyer County Fair, Senior Resource Center, Visitors Bureau, other items on the list here. Of significance here, the Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau, we've talked for years about, the towns, if they had room tax to help fund that, maybe the county funding of that could be reduced. So in my budget, even though they requested $50,000 of county funding again, my recommendation is to still fund them, but at a lower level. They do get significant contributions from those room taxes that the towns have passed. Certainly your prerogative to take a look at that and set your priorities as you desire, but it is a way for us to free up levy that we've used in other portions of the budget. So that is a way to squeeze some more money out of the levy to pay for the other county operations that we have. Those items, that are on this list, we can't just fund anything we want to. There are statutes that allow counties to spend money on things. We can't just spend money on anything we want. It has to be a statutory thing that we spend money on. So those items that we have funded, those organizations that we have funded, are allowed by statute. And I just put those references in there because I like to keep them around. Employee compensation. We've talked a lot about employees and the importance of the services that we provide and the employees that we have to provide those services. Each year we've tried to bump up our pay grid. As you recall, a few years ago, more than a few now, we did a compensation study where we set up a payment plan. So we've got every position analyzed and they're on a grid and they're rated by grades. And so, a higher responsibility position is higher up on the grid than a lower responsible position. And then within those grades, there's steps 1 through 10. And so we hire people at a position on the grid at a step, and then they work through those steps as they progress through the anniversary dates. So this year, I am recommending that we increase the entire grid 2.75%. Effective July 1st, or the payroll around July 1st that begins closest to July 1st. And that helps us keep pace with other counties and attracting and retaining workers. And in addition to that, the people that would be allowed a step would be continuing through those steps up until the control point, which is market value for those positions. So in the budget, you'll see a chunk of change that is in contingency currently, and then depending on where we end up, that money gets used for those increases in compensation. When we talk about compensation, that's just part of the package that we use to attract employees. The other portion is, the environment that we create and that we have. The support of this county board, and it all comes together. This is a good place to work. We've got a good facility here. We've got a good crew, and even though we talk about having trouble getting and retaining employees, this is not unique to Sawyer County, but we do what we can to make this a good place for people to work. Another way that we do that is or another benefit that employees have is the health insurance plan that we have. You recall a couple years ago, we had such a bad year claim-wise that we couldn't get any insurance carrier to insure us other than the one that we've been with, Anthem. And fortunately, Anthem did supply us with health insurance, but it was quite a hefty increase in rates at that time. This year, because we've seen that before, we started our budget at 15% increase just to make sure that we couldn't absorb any increase in health insurance. And the initial quote that we got from our current carrier, Anthem, was a 10% increase. So we did issue an RFP. Our consultant that we work with, Horton Group, issued an RFP to other health insurance carriers, and we're happy to be back now with WCA Group Health Trust, who we had before. They were able to give us a 5.5% increase over what we had last year for virtually the same plan. However, we did make a change that is to the benefit of employees. The plan that we had currently with Anthem had like if you did an office visit, you were responsible for that up until you met your deductible, and then after that, 90% was covered. So you had to get up to your deductible before an office visit was paid. And so, taking your kids to the doctor would be kind of expensive until you met your deductible. What we had previously and what we'll be going back to is a $25 copay for those office visits, which will greatly help, employees as they need to get to the doctor for those office visits. And we'll do open enrollment as we schedule that in November. On the capital side, this is the capital project summary. So this is the 5-year plan for those capital items, like assets, trucks, equipment, that sort of thing. So you'll see in here, the general government, the 7.7 million, there's some things in there. Included in that is the portion of the courtroom renovation. I think we had $500,000 last year, and you're seeing the other 7.5 million in the plan this year. We'll be issuing that $8 million debt in early 2022. And so that's within this plan as well. Some other things in there included are the like the squads for the sheriff's department, and some other items like that. So out of the capital items that are funded by debt, this is the list. So highway, a couple of trucks, a dump truck, the fleet, a couple of fleet cars. We're reducing the fleet by 1 vehicle this year that's coming off of a lease. This purchase of a forestry truck and zoning vehicle. And then the Brunette Dam is in here as well, our portion of the cost of the Brunette Dam. So that doesn't include a coffer dam if they're going in that direction, but this is the estimate that we have currently for that dam. So that 1.3 million for these assets. The next item on your agenda is the authorization to apply for the loan for these assets. So this 1.3 is related to that loan document you'll see in a bit here. The current debt that we have, we still have the jail debt out there. The 2012 debt that gets retired in 2024. We've got the ambulance building in Ojibwa, that debt out there. We did the short-term capital borrowing last year, so we got 1 year left of debt service on that in 2022, and then the capital borrowing that we do this year will pay off in 2 years as well. So this is the total debt schedule that we have for outstanding debt. So what does that mean? We talked about the increase in spending, the 5% increase in spending. What does that do to the tax rate? Well, because our equalized value is higher, it actually means we've got a decrease in the tax rate. So our tax rate would go down from 3.321 per thousand to 3.263 per thousand under this plan. So a little bit lower tax rate, even though there's increase in spending. So this is what's included in the budget. There are other potential sources of revenue that are not built into this budget. So all of the money that we received in ARPA funds are not within this budget. So those usages of those funds will come back to you with budget adjustments as we find ways to spend that money. The treatment, the TAD grant, if we get that grant, that will be for programming. So there's not any revenue or expenditures for that currently. Same with the opioid settlement funds, those will be used for purposes. So that's not built into the budget till we get those amounts. In Land Forestry Committee, we talk about carbon credits. That's an opportunity for us to sell an asset that we have. We own a lot of forest. That is a valuable commodity to sell carbon credits. So the Land Committee is looking at that possibility. That could be substantial revenue for the county. We talked in the past about vehicle registration fee. That's not in the budget, not being recommended at this time. It's just mentioned as an option for you just to keep in mind. And there's always, the referendum if you want to go that route. And we're not to that point where we're needing that at this time. But those are the things that we see in the future that potentially are out there. Again, just the remaining time frame here. So at this point, the budget is in the hands of the county board. You can certainly have discussion tonight on any topic that you want. If you want more information on any particular item that we can get for you, please bring that to our attention. We'll do this kind of again at the public hearing next week, and you'll have an agenda item after that public hearing to talk about and make motions on changes. And you can do that again on budget adoption day on November 9th. So, you can discuss this evening and those other two opportunities, and then you'll be adopting that budget next month.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Hoff. I understand that our ambulance services some parts of Washburn County. I would like, maybe this is a proper discussion at the Public Safety Committee, but I would like a discussion on the rate we're charging the folks in Washburn County versus the rate we're charging our taxpayers, and are we subsidizing Washburn County? And I guess I'd just like a general discussion about that.
Yeah, thank you. I did receive your question, and I've dug up some information. We do talk about that in public safety every year, but we can have a broader discussion amongst the board as well, if you'd like. Yep.
Mr. Schlender.
Mr. Hoff, I saw briefly on these slides that there is recommendations that you're making to some of the entities. Some of them that are under my jurisdiction in terms of economic development. And the rationale is being offered is that they've done fundraising activities or less expense, which I'm not exactly sure what that means. But my concern is that we're funding the libraries at the same numbers for the last years. Don't they also have fundraising activities? And given the fact that for the past year and a half or so, I thought they were closed. And so they did submit an increase in their budgets to help equalize their salaries. I have a concern because some of these other entities are directly benefiting, and I don't mean to, and this is going to be construed the wrong way. I don't mean to say that the library doesn't benefit the county, but we have some specific activities that provide direct benefit to the county. And but we seem to have an uneven standard in terms of what is the county's participation. And so I don't know what we do about that, but I do have a concern that we have money going somewhere which we have little justification or review, but we have a lot of scrutiny for some entities, and they're carrying a financial difference in their budget request. So maybe you could help me with that.
Not sure what the question was exactly there, but this is my recommendation based on the information of the 15 opinions I get in listening into the committees. So, it's certainly your prerogative to adjust any of those numbers as you see fit. I'm trying to accommodate, what the board has talked about in the past for priorities and fitting that into the resources that we have.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council received its budget or received a copy of the allocation from the county budget for their services. And we're budgeting for next year at 172 or 172,000. We do receive some compensation from the tribe to help offset those costs. I'm concerned that we have money that we're cutting from other areas, but we're not addressing some of the areas that need or are addressing those needs. And so, yeah, so I guess when is it the time for us to discuss the nickel and dimes that we're going to fight over? And is that now or is that at the 28th?
You can start now if you like, yes. And the 28th. Yeah, we don't have an agenda item to make motions tonight, but you can certainly discuss issues you want to discuss tonight and then make motions on the 28th and on the on the 9th.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to bring up what I bring up every
Turn
year.
on your microphone. Oh, I'm sorry, from this angle it didn't. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to bring up what I bring up every year, which Mr. Paulson just loves it when I do. The Economic Development Corporation, I see is at $25,000 again this year. Can Mr. Paulson explain to me what have they done for us this year?
Mr. Chairman, if you would, please.
Go ahead.
I believe the Economic Development Corporation 25,000 is a match, where that they will not get the 25,000 unless they raise another 25,000 in the community. And so what do you get for the money? This year, we funded a $5,000 program at the jail, a culinary training session, which helped train, I think, about 8 people. That's one of the things. The Economic Development Corporation was a prime driver on the 2 grants that we got. The internet grant for around Lake Satek, and also the internet grant to complete the build out of Linroot. Both of those towns, I think Linroot contributed about 5,000 to the grant request, and the town of Edgewater, I think, contributed about $12,000. So those are some of the things. The Economic Development Corporation was active in helping the various businesses in Sawyer County secure all of the grants that were available under the ARPA and the other stimulus funds. Sawyer County received, I think, in the Northwest Regional Planning 10-county area, Sawyer County received 15 grants of $10,000 each, which was the highest in all of the 10 counties. I can go on if you'd like me to go on for others.
No, thank you very much. Just a question. No, that 25,000, Mr. Huff, is that matched like you said, or is they get that? Because my understanding last year was that was just
Yeah,
in the budget, 25,000.
There's $25,000 in the budget. If you want to put on strings to that it's a match, we can make sure that happens, yes. So, and that's, I mean, yes, we can do that.
And thank you. Want to put on a match, please? Yeah, but that was much better than last year's explanation. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I'm sorry, who's line is on? Yeah, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoff, you stated that, we have a 5% increase and it's mainly the debt we have is the term you used. And I can remember that we didn't have debt for decades in Sawyer County. We're the second lowest tax rate, no debt. Chris Mayberry was very proud of that fact that we did that. Just some of the real quick notes that I noticed from your presentation. When we talk about increased revenues and things like the Register of Deeds, we're going to get 20,000 more or 12,000 or whatever it was. You can't make people get more birth certificates or death certificates. It is what it is. Those are just the facts. I see we're cutting HVCLB. Now, statutorily, I believe all the room taxes, which we have in Hayward, Lenroot, possibly Bass Lake, statutorily, they get a huge part of that. Are we owning up to the taxes we collect for them if we're only giving them $10,000? Which, and you can just make a note because I can circle back to that. We increase money for the fair, which fairs are great things. We sponsor a party every year. That's great. The fair got money for leasing the grounds. There was a picture in the paper, maybe a month and a half ago. Nice picture. They were giving the fair people a check for leasing the fairgrounds. That's county property that they got a check for leasing that. I don't think we should increase it by any stretch of the imagination. And if we're going to be dropping HVCLB down, I agree with Mr. Helwig, places that possibly could be cut are things like the fair, things like the economic development, which, it's great that the prisoners can cook now. I mean, I like that they have a skill, but at the same time, we have to balance this budget, and it just seems like we're upping everything all the time. The Upper Bruni Dam, that's $310,000, used to come from the Resource Development Fund that the county has, and that was at one point 10% of all the timber sales. Then 1.5% went into a fund so we could fix our dams. Here we are borrowing money for things that we would just pay cash for. You look at that list of $1.3 million, it was to purchase vehicles and to fix the dam. That's not a borrowing thing. That's things that we used to just pay for. We had the money for it. Now we don't. I'm not really following how we aren't cutting anything. We just keep spending and spending and spending. I'd like to have this discussion next week, Thursday, for sure. Thank you.
Mark, is that your light?
Oh, a light one on my head. Oh, it's that one. I'm sorry.
Anybody else wish to make any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so two things have been brought up by a couple different people. The Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau cutting their budget by 80%, I think is extreme. If you ran some numbers and took into account the number of tourists that they actually help bring into this county, and then, as you know, a lot of our county revenue comes from that tourism. So I'm not all in agreement with cutting their budget by 80%. In fact, I wouldn't cut it at all. And then on the previous slide, again, you use this slide as an example, Mr. Hoff, of how we can, save a few dollars cutting some money. But on the previous slide, you mentioned the library and how they requested a 10% increase up to 220,000, but you said, no, we'll just keep it at 200,000. And then in the column to the right, you have the statutory requirements of 122,000 something. So, and there's not even a discussion really or an argument about that. We're voluntarily giving $77,500 above our requirement to the library that was closed, for many months last year. Yet we want to nickel and dime the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau that brings in probably, I don't know, I don't want to exaggerate, but probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue from the tourism industry. So those two things that have been brought up a few times, I think we need to look closer at those. That's all I have.
Mr. Schlender.
As we go into this discussion, I'm kind of a veteran of some of these. We end up passing something like a $32 or $33 million operating budget for the county, and we're going to fight over $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 here and there. And that's the work we've chosen. Before we get into that, I really want to acknowledge the work that Mr. Hoff has done and Mr. Keefe has done. they put this out here so that we have an informed conversation. And, you know, people's livelihoods are impacted by that. And so I want to thank them for the work that they do. They're diligent, they're at every committee, and they're going to catch a lot of grief from our decisions, and they're going to get flooded with a bunch of communications from other entities now that we've, you know, raised the flag on that. So Mr. Keefe and Mr. Hoff, I hope you guys have a really good Thanksgiving and Christmas. And, you know, thank you for the work that you do.
Ms. Pettit, go ahead.
I would suggest about the transit, the $150,000, bringing that down as I do every year. They have not contributed to the southern end of the district. There is also an issue on the reservation. Some of the places are not being reached either. We seem to go round and round about this, and nothing ever gets resolved about it. And it's just unfortunate that we don't have transit down on the southern end of the district, but we're going to keep them at $150,000. That's it.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I make
Excuse me. I want to make sure other people have a chance too. Does anybody else have any? Okay, Bruce, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Just a comment on the Visitors and Convention Bureau. I think Mr. Schlinder was around when we concluded that it was better to have our guests pay part of our budget rather than having the citizens of Sawyer County pay our budget. I think Mr. Schlinder was at the town of Round Lake to help convince them of that. Happy to say the town of Round Lake did approve the room tax. And it looks like, based on conservative projections, the Visitors Convention Bureau will get an additional $40,000 from the room tax. Also, the town of Bass Lake passed the room tax. And again, the estimate is that the Visitors Convention Bureau will get somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So to reduce the funds as much as we've done, he seems to be justified.
Go ahead.
I just want to say to Ms. Pettit, have you gone to the transit meetings and made suggestions on how to fix these issues that you're bringing up?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
You were first.
But you haven't spoken.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ms. Essel.
I was just going to say that we should be applauding and supporting the places that are bringing in revenue. Do they get to select how much room tax they give to each, correct? Each township, they determine what they give the room tax to, correct?
There are some rules, I think it's 30% to 70%.
It's 70% that goes to activities supporting tourism directly. And most of that money from the room taxes from Bass Lake and from the town of Round Lake is going to the Visitors and Convention Bureau.
Oh.
The towns get to spend the 30%.
So what is to say that the Hayward Lakes Visitor Bureau wouldn't just promote those townships then? Why do they have to promote all of Sawyer County if we're not supporting them?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The question is, why would they, thank you, why would they have to give tourism for the whole county if they're getting room tax just from those townships? Why couldn't they just promote those townships? Like if the town of Round Lake said, we just want you to promote us, Sawyer County's only giving you 10,000, but we're giving you 40,000. I just think like you're basically what I heard you say is that you're penalizing them for doing a good job. And I think they've shown merit, they've written grants, they definitely bring people into the county. I would like to see them get 25,000 and economic development get 10.
Mr. Schlinder.
Mr. Paulson, I do remember those times, and we owe a debt of gratitude to Ms. Beckman and her crew as we have sent them off to various townships with the idea that the county board was going to support them. And there were very few county board members there. And as Ms. Beckman and them were subjected to some of the opinions that were varied on the idea of more taxes being implemented. I do acknowledge the fact that Round Lake did pass, and it was probably not very popular, but it is actually wise on their part to collect that money from the people who come in and use that. My concern is where they're projected to receive that. We know what the fixed cost is for Hayward Lakes and Convention Bureau, and so I'm concerned that we're trying our best to cut the funds, and I would exercise caution. I mean, an 80% reduction is a huge leap of faith, and it's not that I don't doubt Mr. Hoff and Mr. Keefe's projections. I think we should exercise caution when we're doing that. To second Ms. Hessel's comments, they do report, they share a lot of information, including some of the things that happen. Now that the room tax is done, there are some entities who are paying that under protest. And so I anticipate either a legal challenge or something else that's going to happen that's going to try to strengthen their arguments for why they should keep their money when it's their money. And so I don't disagree with their positions. I just think that the Hayward Lakes Convention Bureau shouldn't be the recipient of either the anger or the frustrations or the other conduct that seems to rise from that kind of taxation. So I am against a reduction in the Hayward Lakes Convention Bureau. I think that if we had a chance to really go through, I think we could find some other areas where we could kind to, I think we got to take from one and add to another because there's no new money coming in. So we have to work with what we have that's in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? I was going to make just a short comment. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. I'm
Just
sorry.
a real quick question, Tom. How many other items are statutory regulated that we exceed? That we have? What is the pattern for that? So on the library, the first two that were on there, it shows like last year. So you got that one. The second one, Winter Public Library, 75,000 is what we paid, and we're only obligated then 2,000. Is that, I can't.
Yes, that is correct.
And so how many other things, entities are there in the budget that we meet and exceed that we don't do the minimum?
Well, libraries, I didn't put in the amounts, but the amount requested in those other libraries is the statutory amount. So we're not exceeding on any of those other libraries. And historically, that's what the board has opted to contribute to Weiss and Winter libraries. Certainly your prerogative to do something different as long as it's at least the minimum for that. And then the other organizations, those are for your option as well. The Northwest Regional Planning, that is an obligation that is by statute and by a formula. I think everything else in there is your prerogative.
Oh, I heard that.
Go ahead.
Tom, as far as those libraries, did the other counties in the surrounding area give monies to those like we do also?
Each county does the same thing, yes.
I was going to say that when we ask questions that start with why are we giving this much here and that much there and taking it away here, we need to remember that all of the figures in the 2021 budget and every budget in history are there because the county board voted for them. It's not because the administrator or anybody else decided to toss numbers out. It's because the county boards voted for them. And that's what we are going to be asked to do next Thursday. And one other comment, it's a sad truism in county budgets, and it has been for before Ron and I ever got on this board, is that the better an individual department performs and the more money they manage to save or increase their revenue, the more they're expected to do the same, if not more, in the next year. We have never been able to award departments for increasing their revenues or decreasing their expenditures because there's only so much money to go around. So that's kind of what's happening today, even with some of our out of county entities. We can't afford to reward their good work in raising money. We don't have all that extra money floating around, and it's our job to make those decisions that we will make next Thursday. Thank you. Anybody else? You want to continue with you? Or is that Bruce's entity now? Oh, Mr. Slender.
Ms. Roker or Mr. Hoff? If we're here for another 30 minutes, do we get an extra $15?
We're not going to be here for another 30 minutes.
We're ready for number.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to.
Nope, nope, nope.
No, hang on.
Oh, that's right, Mr. Paulson's finance.
Yeah, so we do have the item that was moved on the agenda, the state trust fund loan application. As I recall, when I went through the information on the capital side, those items listed here, the trucks and equipment, the 1.3 million. This is the program that we started last year where we are issuing debt and then paying it off in 1 or 2 years, which allows us to buy these capital items and fund them by debt. It is true that we have not done that in the past. However, as we are ever more stressed with levy limits, this is an option that we decided to go down last year. So the item on the agenda is to apply for that loan. So that's the state trust fund loan. This application goes down to the state, goes through a process down there for approval. We would get the money yet this year and then start paying it off next year. If you did not elect to do that loan, then we would need to fund these pieces of equipment within the levy limits. And so we would need to reduce our spending by 1.3 million or not buy these pieces of equipment.
Okay, now we're ready for a motion. Yeah, now we're ready for a motion. So, Mr. Duffy.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Bruce was the.
Yeah, I'll make
made
the motion to borrow $1.3 million approximately from the State Bureau of Public Lands. Mr. Hoff, I understand correctly, it would bear an interest rate of 3.5% and we would pay it back within 2 years.
2.5% interest.
Pardon me?
2.5% interest
Okay.
over 2 years. Yes.
Good, thank you.
That's why.
And Mr.
That's my
Duffy is
motion.
seconding. Okay, any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I said it last year when we borrowed money. I'll say it again. We're gaming the system. There's levy limits. Having a loan doesn't count against the levy limits. And here we are borrowing our way out of problems again. Trucks and fixing a dam. This is something completely unexpected that we need a new truck or trucks that we have to fix a dam. Nope. This should be regular built into our budget. And instead we're going to borrow our way out of it. I don't like it. I won't, it'll be 14-1 again. And I don't mind that. I'm just trying to remind you that borrowing your way out of debt is not the way to do it. So it's already built into our budget for this year, but I don't have to like it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, this is a roll call vote, correct?
Yes, because it does take a 3/4 of the elected members. You'll do a roll call vote on this.
Okay,
Ed Peters? Yes. Ron Kinsley?
Yes.
Don Pettit,
Yes.
Ron Buckles,
Yes.
Chuck Van Etten,
Yes.
Dale Olson,
No.
Brian Bizanette,
Yes.
Bruce Paulson,
Yes.
Thomas Duffy,
Yes.
Mark Helwig, James Schlender,
Yes.
Stacy Hessel, Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Dale Schluter.
Yes.
You have a quorum, you have the majority.
Okay, resolution passed. Thank you, folks. Now does that conclude okay. So now we need a motion to go into closed session. Okay, have a second. And Mr. Buckles and Mr. Kinsley did the second.
Go into closed session. Sawyer County Administrative Committee may go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851G to confer with legal counsel of Sawyer County, who is rendering oral and or written advice concerning strategy to adopt by Sawyer County with respect to litigations and is like to become involved in. I'll do it again.
Okay.
One person didn't hear me.
This. Beg pardon?
They have to.
Virtually do a test that they're isolated, that they're vaccinated, and that
Well, as you said, we will trust.
Mr. Van Etten has that.
I'll get it.
You are,
He needs to walk in. I do. I didn't take the
I know, yes, we need to have a roll call vote.
are you
with
ready?
the door open. Hang on,
Hang on,
with the door.
Don't shut it yet.
we can't close the doors until we vote to go into closed session. So roll call vote, please.
Dale Schluter,
Yes.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Stacy Hessel, James Schlender,
Yes.
Mark Helwig,
Yes.
Tom Duffy,
Yes.
Bruce Paulson,
Yes.
Brian Bizanette,
Yes.
Chuck Van Etten,
Yes.
Dale Olson,
Yes.
Don Pettit,
Yes.
Ron Kinsley,
Yes.
Ron Buckles,
Yes.
Ed Peters.
Yes.
Motion passed. Can you tell us when okay, we're recording now. Okay. No, number 20. I was mistaken. We're not going to take any action. This is just FYI. Okay, item 20, correspondence, reports from conferences and meetings and other matters for discussion only.
Mr. Chairman, really quickly, kind of a feather in Sawyer County's hat. Wisconsin Towns Association made Clarence Ed Fry Clerk of the Year out of 76 nominees of all town clerks from the town of Meteor.
Good job.
I have a question, and maybe someone here could just answer it. I know we can't, like, work for the county. Sorry, yeah, we're still, okay. But my question is, you can't get people to work. So I would like to drive the veterans, be a, well, yeah, whatever, because they only have, I think they have one guy. And they're trying to find someone right now. And how would I go about seeing if we can do an exception to the rule or something? You guys are. No, I'm not.
They have to want to ride with you.
He threw that out there. I'm not saying I wouldn't get paid. It's not a voluntary job. You get like $9 an hour.
I thank you, Mark. I appreciate your generous offer. I would talk to Mr. Hoff and Gary and see if something can be worked out.
Okay, because that, of course, I don't want to break any rules.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
I don't
Okay,
have
that's
anyways.
enough conversation. Anything further under item 20? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
You made it.
Yeah.